We turn now to paper 8, item 8, the recruitment update. Bill, are you handling this as well?
It is, yes, Chairman. Two papers here. First of all, I'll take the recruitment update, and we touched on it briefly earlier. I won't repeat what I said about the the numbers and the people behind the numbers, other than perhaps just to share from my own directorate experience, something we do each month, which is just we put out a little survey to our teams and our staff to say how's it feeling, what's working well, what you're worried about, and consistently over the months that's come up with 4 themes. 2 of them very positive, 2 of them more difficult. The positive ones are people are really bought into the mission of the Commissioning Board. They, are absolutely enthused by the opportunity to do the right things for patients and to do it through the lens of outcomes all the time. Those outcomes including patient experience, responding to the voice of patients. That's a mission which really has grabbed not just the imagination but the commitment of staff, certainly right the way across my directorate, and I expect that's much wider as well. They're really bought into the values we've been talking about. Tim's run now a number of values workshops where our teams can get involved in talking about how we want to be, how we want to work, our behaviours, how we want to not just talk about outcomes but really hardwire that into the experience of our everyday work, and people are absolutely they're inspired by those conversations and they're absolutely committed to making that real. The 2 tougher messages are people feel just a massive workload at the minute. It's what I referred to earlier, in both delivering a lot of the current world, trying to develop the new world, as well as actually particularly in Ian's directorate, starting to operate the new world. That's over these past couple of months, that's really come together as a very significant set of work pressures, and it's those 2 first things that are keeping people going, but we shouldn't underestimate the pressure we are putting on people across the board. And finally, they have found the recruitment process quite tough. It's stretched over a long period, and there are still steps to go till they feel absolutely confident that they'll get paid the right amount on the right day. So those anxieties are there. I think that's a snapshot from my team, but I would guess that it's probably a reasonable reflection of how things feel in the board more broadly at the moment. I wanted to say that because actually a lot of the content of the report, when you look at the numbers, is actually quite positive. We're making decent progress, I think, and I'll just draw out 4 themes from this, if I may, Chair. The first of all is progress with recruitment, and I can update you on some of the numbers that are in this paper. We're now over 80% of our posts have been recruited to successfully. That's over 4,800 staff signed up, ready to join the board. That's a slightly uneven picture. It's higher in the operations directorates and out in the area teams where there have been a greater proportion of transfers. A number of our support centre directorates are still hovering at or slightly below the 50% figure. So you can see there's a lot to be done there still. We have, and we set it out in the paper, looked at some of the business critical areas. So I won't go through those, but I know the board's been interested to know before about some of the pressure points, and Ian picked it up earlier with EPPR. We've identified a number of others and given you some progress reports on those. Second theme in the report is around the offer letters. It's great having a successful interview we need to translate that then into issuing formal offer letters with the contracts. And that's been a slow process because we've had a lot of discussions with other players in the new system. So the offer letter is something that's been agreed with each of the new parts of the system, so there's a degree of consistency for people, and of course with the unions. And they've been good, very positive discussions, but they have taken some time. And what's that meant is that we built up quite a significant backlog of offer letters. I took soundings yesterday, and we were hoping that by the end of February, by the end of this week, we would have cleared that backlog. I think it's more realistic to think that will be the end of next week. There are still some outstanding areas of blockage. Interestingly, we're having very, very good partnership with BSA, the Business Services Authority, who are handling a lot of this on our behalf. So once we get the information from the interviews through, they issue the letters, and they've put in a lot of additional capacity. Their turnaround now is 2 days, and we do expect that therefore we'll be clear of the backlog by the end of next week. And the sampling we've done is that the offer letters are in the most parts accurate, though there will still be this process of a week or so for people just to hammer that down, agree it, so that they're absolutely clear of their position. The third area, which again I mentioned earlier, so I won't labour here, is around payroll, and that's set out in the report. That's the next step in the chain, and clearly, as you can see, the backlogs being cleared, that's going to put a lump of activity onto the payroll provider. Again, we have an assurance that they've got the capacity in place. I think there are still questions about the accuracy of all the information, the data that will get onto payroll for the first month, but there is a lot of confidence in the people running that project that people will be paid in April, and of course there'll be contingency arrangements in place, as you'd expect for any isolated problems that we find out about. Last theme in the report, and I think it's a really important one that the board has returned to regularly, is about the diversity of our own workforce as we recruit more. The numbers tell us a more positive story, an improving story. So both in the workforce overall and in the very senior managers, we have improved the diversity so that we're beginning to better represent the communities we serve across the country. But you will also see that that's not uniform, and I wouldn't want for 1 minute to give the board any grounds for complacency. I think it's very important that the working group we've established with non-executives to keep a strong focus on the diversity of our workforce, to actually understand the blockages, including we've started undertaking 1 or 2 case studies. What were their problems in the process? What was the experience of different individuals? So that working group can learn some lessons and ensure that we can really live up to that commitment to fairness, equality for not just the people we serve, but the people we recruit. The board's asked to note the report.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for so detailed a report, because it brings home to all of us the sheer complexity of what we're doing and the human element. And I mean, I was very impressed to hear from you of the 2 strong messages, which I think were shared with us last night by Mike Burrows and Richard Barker, our respectively area team and regional directors. But the other 2 messages are actually more important to the board. I think that the great vulnerability of the way in which we're having to go about the recruitment, and how we ensure that people land appropriately at the board and have all the formalities well completed, efficiently and promptly before they arrive. So thank you very much for the detailed account. May I invite comments from colleagues? Kieran.
Supplementary to my mistimed question earlier, the offer letters and the stickiness of the process, I think we'll muddle through and do the best we can, and it will go away ultimately. The workload one may not. How happy are we that actually we've got the right number of people in the right places with the right workload?
I think I've got two responses to that, and it is something I'd advise the board to keep conscious of over the coming months. I think we've got a particular coming together at the moment of exceptional circumstances, if you like. So there are people who are carrying out more than one role and doing it at a time of particular complexity through transition. So I think we do have a peak of workload on many of our people at the moment that predictably will get better. So I think that's my positive slant on it. But we shouldn't forget that in bringing together the commissioning components from 161 different organisations, at the same time we're attempting to reduce the running, the administration costs of the commissioning system by nearly 50%. Now we're being as creative as we can in the way we work. For example, the work that Paul's been doing on the financial spine should be a much more reliable and streamlined process. We're gathering together our analytical capacity to make sure that whole's greater than sum of the parts. So we are being as creative and imaginative as we can, but that is still a very significant challenge, and I do think it's a proper question the board should keep asking us once this particular peak is is over in say 3 to 4 months.
Victor.
It does worry me because I think the question of how we engage people in the new culture at the same time as we're asking them to still engage with the old culture and deal with the workload is really important, and I think people then, if we not handle this carefully, they refer to the default position. It's very difficult to get them to move forward. And I just wonder, it's not really a question. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but it's how are we embedding, how are we engaging with some of the OD interventions that we talk about that look great? How are they actually landing as people come in? How are we thinking about how we can start bringing them into the new culture now? How is that being received? And sometimes thank yous and all, what are we doing to sort of signal new culture, and how is that going down? And because it does, I think it's one of the most, it's the highest risk issue is the culture stuff. It's not even so much the workload, it's that people won't hear, they won't receive change if they.
You're about to come in onto a paper reporting on that.
I know we are, but it's just.
Is there anything you'd like to respond to, Victor, just quickly on that?
Well, I think it's a really important question. At the moment, we'll come on to the proper OD strategy, but at the moment we are putting a great premium on personal leadership. So the leaders we're appointing, we're expected to live those values, to, as they welcome people on board, to take a personal responsibility to start expressing those values and that difference. And the leadership forum that meets regularly of all of our most senior managers is conscious of that responsibility.
And in fact, we have put quite a lot of time into the regional and area directors through the leadership forum, which I think now we're opening up to non-executive directors who want to come along to sit in and all the rest of it. And interestingly, they're meeting today without us, which is an interesting thing in all sorts of ways. Not least of all for them to explore the issue, which I think certainly people have said, is that we're sucking too much up to the centre that they could adequately in a devolved system do. So we're trying to kind of deal with those things as we go along, and that's exactly what they're doing today.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, Bill, thank you very much. However, it's not over for you yet. Let's approve that paper and move on, if we may, to the update on the OD strategy. Stu.
Thanks, Malcolm. This sets out the next phase, recommends the next phase of our OD strategy. You'll remember phase one was really about this setup phase, and now we're moving on to developing ourselves as an organisation next year. This is at the heart of our cultural change. The way we engage with our staff, the way we involve our teams, and the way we focus this around the needs of patients, so that we do achieve patients at the centre of everything we do, as well as staff feeling motivated and empowered to make the decisions which make a difference for those patients. So it's important for us, and I think will continue to be. Again, I'll just pick out three things from paper because I know people will have read it. We've set out the vision for how we want to be more fully in paragraphs between 9 and 22. And again, that draws on a lot of the really excellent work Tim's been leading, with great feedback from our staff and from our teams. Paragraph 40 summarises the conclusions we've drawn from some of the engagement with teams to tell us what's going to be important in the OD strategy over the coming year. And the message is there, retaining the 5 objectives that we've signed off before, but adding a 6th, which I think does reflect a lot of what we've already been talking about, which is a very specific and deliberate commitment to build morale with our staff right the way across the board, through meaningful engagement, but just as importantly then through action which responds to that engagement. So we're recommending that 6th principle be put into our OD strategy. We set out as well in the appendix 3, an important part of this, which is our evaluation framework. And that, it's great for us to agree this today, and I hope the board will. But to keep it live and relevant, we need to be refreshing it, and we can only do that properly if we're asking our teams about their experience of our values and practice, of how our OD strategy is supporting that, and if we're open to that 360-degree feedback, which makes sure it's not just an internal conversation. So I'd ask the board, as well as agreeing that extra principle, also to endorse the evaluation framework. That's all I was going to pick out.
Comments?
I mean, it's good. I mean, we've got to do it, but it is good. The thing I think that strikes me, thinking about it and listening to the conversations earlier, is about how we make the connection between us as a national body with patients and carers and people in communities. And particularly given, and I had a meeting yesterday with a cross-section of staff from Manchester and the region, is how committed people are to doing it. And so how can we build into all of this opportunities for people to do it directly? So, for example, one of the things we want to do is to promote the dementia friend training and education to people in the commissioning board, so we can get lots of people who go through that, so they get to do that. How can we develop volunteering or working on the front line, or take all of those sorts of things, which seem to be a part of just the connectedness that we should have with the system and the people and the patients as a whole. And I'm not sure whether it's quite reflected in this at the moment, but it just seems to me really important for all of us, in the board and in the National Support Centre and in the area teams.
I think it's exactly right, and we should incorporate that. Again, just tapping into my direct experience, a lot of the ideas that are coming back from my teams include, can we have an entitlement to some work time which we can put into working with carers locally, or with charitable bodies locally, or with NHS bodies locally, so that being a central support service actually can still be nourished by, you know, practical volunteering experience during work time, and that was one of the proposals I
I think
expect.
it's a really good proposal. And it totally reflects on also, you know, the relatively small amount of time when we had the joint meeting with people with learning disabilities had a massive impact on all of us and how we saw this sort of thing. So giving more people the opportunity to connect, I think, is going to be to keep us connected as a
within the constraints of workloads that we touched on in the last meeting. But this is the sort of inspirational thing, actually, that I think changes people's attitudes towards their work. Victor?
So I think that's really, really good. And I just wondered, the only bit that just... So the volunteering piece, and I know is one bit, but I just wanted to check that actually this could be seen as continuing professional development. That the sort of... The principle is that you bring the outside in as part of continuing professional development. So it's not seen as sort of use your own time, or indeed it's extra or apart from the work. It's how we will develop you professionally, is that we will bring the consequences, in a sense, of the people that you're working into your development of your thinking and idea. I think that could be a really powerful part of, and it's really important that the message is that it's part of, not an add-on, or you don't have to do. It's like, if you want to develop professionally, you've got to bring these people in, and that could be really, really significant. And I think it links to the work that me and Kieran's going to be doing. If we can find that link, I think we could really transform the culture.
Yeah.
Good. Myra?
Could I just ask, because I think we should never let go of that 50% reduction in running cost challenge that our executive colleagues are having to meet. And a couple of times people said we would return to that pressure that staff feel they're under. But I just wanted to ask whether we could be kind of a bit more determined about how we will do that, and then link it to the question on the questions in Appendix 3, because we're asking in the survey lots of things, but actually I'm not sure we'd get the answer about. I get support to do my job well, but we're not asking people, have you got enough? Have you got too much to do? Probably everyone would say yes in that point, but there's something about making sure we do capture that, because it is a very important issue as we go further ahead. And certainly, I would think that the board ought to consider at an appropriate point how that's been achieved, really, which isn't by flogging our people into breakdown kind of thing, but by smarter ways of working, and tell that story well when we have it.
I agree. Point very well made.
So, sorry, Chair, can I just suggest that... I'm just going to suggest that, just lead on quickly from that. It'd be really, I would find it useful, building on from what Moira said, if we had a bit more line of sight of that, perhaps some examples to the board about how change has been achieved within that 50% reduction that's really smart and really, you know, I think it could be empowering for people to, not that knowing that the board has looked at what you're doing is going to make people get up with a rapid smile in the morning, but I just think it might help us actually feel a bit better about not flogging people but actually leading them. Just a suggestion.
I was just going to follow up Moira's comments about the 4 questions, because there is at the moment being piloted in several organisations in the NHS the cultural barometer, which is being designed by a group of 6 very experienced, very senior nurses. Now, although the cultural barometer is designed at the moment to look at nursing in particular, it has got the ability to be spread across, and there's at least 1 or 2 of the organisations that are piloting it with their boards, for example. But it does ask a lot more of those questions that you've just referred to. So I think we've got an opportunity. It's too early to take it in for April because it's still being piloted, but we are supporting that work, and it would be a good opportunity to look at whether there's any lessons we could bring from that into this particular part of our work.
See how that could enrich this work.
A very quick point of, so very importantly from April we're proposing we introduce something similar to that, which we're calling the staff climate survey, but is in effect a barometer, alongside Launchpad, which is a sort of form of immersion for staff joining the board to connect them very quickly, very thoroughly with the values and vision of the organisation. But let's learn more about barometer, but certainly that's...
We might as well use some of the work that's already been done rather than reinventing it. Let's look at what's already been worked on.
Yeah.
Good. Bill, I hope that's been a helpful discussion to take forward those ideas.
They're very helpful. Thank
That's
you.
very good.